All right, welcome back. Fantasy Sports Today here on Sports Grid. Joe Pisapia coming up. We're going to preview the weekend show, and Howard Bender from Fantasy Alarm, Wager Alarm will do our Super Contest preview picks. We've got plenty to get to here on the show today. I want to touch on some baseball here in this hour as well. Here are our headlines as we get you through your lunch hour here on the show. NFL Week 2 is upon us. We had one game, of course, last night where the Washington football team won by a point. College football this weekend, Florida and Alabama, of course, huge game for me. UCF plays at Louisville tonight, and Maryland takes on Illinois. UCF is a 6-point favorite at Louisville. Maryland a 7-point favorite at Illinois in college football. 15 games in Major League Baseball, and at the Fortinet Championship, Chez Reavie is round one leader there, and the PGA Tour's first event of 2021-22. Doesn't feel like they took much time off. I mean, was it a month? I don't even know. It feels like it was really short. But Davis, I don't know if you caught this yesterday, but it looks like, at least for now, Shohei Ohtani's pitching season could potentially be over with the Angels, clearly out of it at this point. And I don't know if you caught the scuttle going back and forth with the Angels and White Sox, but Tony La Russa thrown out of the game by the White Sox because his pitcher threw at Ohtani not once, but twice. And the umpires got together and ended up throwing out the pitcher. This is after, of course, the Angels hit Jose Abreu and Tim Anderson, and I think even someone else in that series. But needless to say, your favorite manager of all time, Tony La Russa, he got thrown out. And also, Shohei Ohtani, with the injury, him getting hit had nothing to do with the injury. I guess he was just warming up and then felt something. But it looks like his pitching resume is complete for 2021.
Yeah, probably the right thing at this point. He's gone into a little bit of a slump at the plate. And I mean, just imagine how exhausted this guy's got to be. He's pitched 120 innings. I believe in the end, he started 19 games. He really has not taken that many days off. We thought that if he was going to do both of these things, that he would, relatively frequently be taking games off. He's played in 142 games. He's got 569 plate appearances. He's going to end up with well over 600 plate appearances at this point. I mean, he's got to just be exhausted. Like, he just has to get home from a game, like, where I don't know if he lives in a house or an apartment in LA or whatever, and he just has to collapse into bed. Like, that guy has got to be so it's September 17th. He's been doing everything possible to stay healthy. This is by far, if you go look at his numbers from over in Japan, by far the most amount of games he's played, the most amount of plate appearances, the most innings. I mean, hats off to him. He is really doing the thing, because I cannot imagine how exhausted that guy's got to be.
And on top of it, he had no All-Star break. Not only did he not have an All-Star break, but he played in the All-Star game. He hit in the Home Run Derby. And so, I mean, it's only natural that he should feel that way. And it's interesting because I know that you mentioned this, I think it was Monday here on the show, about some of the gaining steam for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. potentially winning the MVP. And you know what, Davis? Look, I don't think he is, but I'm starting to hear a little bit of the same thing. I cannot see it happening. But if
we can't have it, Craig. We can't have it. You got to be reaching out. You got to tell your friends who have the vote. We absolutely cannot have this. I cannot lose these bets. It is unconscionable. I'm a Yankees fan. I'm a Red Sox fan. I'm a Baltimore Orioles fan. Just every team in the AL East has got to win more games than the Blue Jays. Salvador Perez has got to hit more home runs. Jose Abreu has to bat more guys in. We cannot have this. I cannot live in a world where Ohtani does not win MVP this year. I mean, how distraught would I be? I spend like 2 months basically counting my money. We cannot have it.
Listen, I still feel great about it, but it's interesting that it's now starting to pop up a little bit. And it's funny because you're a big Blue Jays backer too, right? Like that's been your thing all long. And now, what happens if he wins the Triple Crown and the Blue Jays get in over the Yankees and Red Sox, and what kind of conversation? Look, I still refuse to vote for. I love Vlad, but I would not vote for him. I'd vote for Ohtani. And it's funny though. He made it. Ohtani, make no mistake about it. There's 2 weeks left in the season. He made it to the end. So what? He misses one start or two? I mean, come on. This is just a ridiculous conversation to have. No one's ever done this in history. And not only that, Davis, the point that I made about a month ago, saying that the problem is if he wins the MVP this year, he's got to win it every year from now on. If he doesn't win it this year, when will he ever win it? What does he got to do? I mean, it's unthinkable to me. 30 starts next year?
He should win. He should win this year, and he should be the favorite every year, even over his teammate, Mike Trout, who will be the favorite. You know, when we look at, and when you and I are doing the show in March or whatever, and we're talking about AL MVP next year, Trout will be the favorite, and I'll be telling everyone to listen, just bet on Ohtani because it can't be a bad bet, right? Because as long as this dude plays, he's good. Like, that's just the nature of who Ohtani is. So if he plays, he's good.
Yeah, and think about this. He's probably second in the American League MVP voting without throwing a pitch in 2021.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. So how could this even be close in 2021? It doesn't make any sense. All right, 2 interviews coming up next. First, we'll talk to Joe Pisapia, ask him about his leagues, how much Elijah Mitchell went for, and some of the other free agent acquisition budget players on the waiver wire. And then we'll bring in Howard Bender from Fantasy Alarm, and we'll take a look at the Westgate Super Contest odds for this upcoming week in the NFL. We've also got Fantasy or Reality and the Sports Grid 60. So stay on the grid. A lot more football content coming your way in just a couple of minutes. Great.
SportsGrid.com. Betting insights and entertainment at your fingertips 24/7 as our team covers the most important topics in sports wagering. Real-time odds, predictive betting models, expert picks, and more. Want the edge? Then get on the grid. SportsGrid.com.
Great. Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today. This and every Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern, you can catch Joe Pisapia, Matt Stryker, and myself for Fantasy Sports Today. And this week, we're helping you get ready for week 2 of the fantasy football season, and of course, the NFL season as well. Joe, it is great to be with you. What's going on?
It is great to see you, my friend. Sunday seems so far away. I just want to get to week 2 because week 1 certainly was wacky, to say the least. I think we could all agree on that.
Yeah, and look, every year it kind of happens like this, and we have injuries, we have players that are added, dropped, and I think we could probably start there. We've got, the number 1 added player in all of fantasy football. Everyone's been buzzing and talking this week about Elijah Mitchell of the San Francisco 49ers. I'm playing in leagues, Joe. I'm seeing a minimum of 50% of people's free agent acquisition budget picked up on Mitchell, who rushed for over 100 yards last week. We know that there is some running back competition for him. One less player, Raheem Mostert, who broke my heart last year and broke my wallet, gave the $100 to you off a bad bet on Raheem Mostert last year. Mitchell, Sermon, Hasty, I don't know, Wilson in the future. Is there any answer to this running back situation? Did people waste their money on Mitchell?
I think if you went to half of your fab budget for Mitchell, it might not be a great decision. And it's nothing against the player necessarily. It's more about the Shanahan scheme. Now, the good news is that there's a lot to go around in terms of the way that they like to utilize the running back position. Personally, I still think Trey Sermon is the best talent of that group. My colleague over on the Betting Pro show, who does a ton of college football, thinks that Elijah Mitchell is actually the more talented 3-down back. But it would surprise nobody if Trey Sermon went out there this week against the Eagles and put up, 15 carries for 100 yards and a touchdown and made a lot of people upset about the money they spent on Elijah Mitchell. The thing is, if you already had Sermon on your roster, I can understand spending more. That way you kind of contain the backfield. Now, the pivot, you kind of mentioned it, almost facetiously, but in a way I actually think it's kind of smart, is to go throw a buck, maybe 2 out there on Jeffrey Wilson Jr. if you have an IR spot, because that allows you at least a piece of this backfield. Because if you dial back to last winter, The guy who looked the best in this backfield, who was getting 20 carries in the last few weeks of the season, was actually Jeffrey Wilson Jr. So maybe, just maybe, that is the guy after all. And it absolutely does stink for Raheem Mostert. It's another very disappointing year for him. And obviously we wish him all the best. Nobody wants to see anybody get hurt. But I will say it's going to be a very difficult backfield going forward. But if I had to put my money on somebody still, it would be Trey Sermon based off the talent and based off the draft capital that they used for him, because they did use a significant amount. And I think that does matter.
Yeah, and look, it may be this week, it may not. It's definitely a very fluid situation for sure with San Francisco, not to mention their wide receiver situation with Ayuk too. We'll get to that a little bit later. Let's stick with running back for the week, because the other, maybe start or sit, I guess you could say, question, Tyson Williams of the Baltimore Ravens. Now, Williams looked every bit the part of a starting fantasy running back, Joe, in the first half last week. I believe he had a slight injury that kept him out a little bit in the second half of that game, and then we saw him late. My co-host Davis Maddock a little worried about some of the pass blocking schemes, and then lo and behold, late yesterday, Adam Schefter reported that Devonta Freeman is being added to the roster going into the game this week. So Freeman, who is a very good pass blocker but probably can't do anything else, Murray, who played a little bit, Tyson Williams. You would think this is a great matchup for him against Kansas City. Can catch some balls out of the backfield. Should we be nervous playing Williams this week, or is there no reason to be?
I think maybe a little nervous, but I think what you saw to Tyson Williams in that first half catching the football was very eye-opening. That was a huge win for his fantasy value, especially in those PPR formats. Now, what you don't like is little problems on the exchange that they had there with Lamar Jackson later in that game. And you also don't like that Latavius Murray is out there just kind of falling in the end zone later on. That didn't help either. But you're right. The pass protection is the one thing that is the question when it comes to Tyson Williams. However, that can be said of any rookie running back. So why are we putting too much on Tyson Williams in the first place in that regard? So that is always the biggest concern when you have a young running back. I am not afraid of Le'Veon Bell. I'm not afraid of Freeman. I'm really not afraid that much of Latavius Murray, although I think Murray will have a role. In terms of fantasy upside, it's all resting on the shoulders of Tyson Williams. Now, what can he be? I think he could be a useful flex running back. If you have to rely on him as an RB2, that's a different situation. Now, maybe in a 14-team league, you could do that. But if you're in a 10-team league, that's not where you want to be, even with all the injuries we've had. 12-team leagues, maybe you're right on the fringe there, depending on what your other lineup looks like or how many injuries you've had. But I think Tyson Williams, that first effort was very encouraging. And I think that you're right. Going into this game script, you would imagine they're going to have to throw the ball a little bit more. But the good news is, by far, the most explosive back, the most talented back in that backfield was clearly Tyson Williams. And there's nobody they're going to bring in off of the retread list who's going to change that fact.
Yeah, and Denver's in a similar situation. Let's talk about them here for a minute. Basically, the top fantasy player that was injured this past week was Jerry Jeudy of the Denver Broncos. When you finish in last place, Joe, you get a great schedule. Denver's proving that. They get the Giants in week 1, the Jags in week 2, and they get the Jets in week 3. My gosh. Now, it gets a lot tougher for Denver after that, but man, you got to ride the wave. So with Denver on the road, look, you saw what Houston did to Jacksonville's defense last week. I know that a couple of years ago, Courtland Sutton was one of your guys, and he got hurt. Maybe is there a chance that we start to see him a little bit more this week? I know they have a kid named Hamler. They have Tim Patrick, who's been around before. Did you make any moves to pick up those guys? Are those startable players this week in Jacksonville?
In the right league, they are. Tim Patrick, actually, I picked up in a few leagues, and some of them I played in deeper leagues. But still, Tim Patrick, even a 12-team mixed league, I think has that ability to help you out there. I think it's going to be some combination. I think Courtland Sutton immediately gets a little bit more of the target share. That's something you can count on, and he's proven out pretty good. This was crushing to me because I absolutely love Jerry Jeudy. He was a guy that I had earmarked to really take that next step, maybe become a top 20 wide receiver. It's probably out the window, but the good news is that it wasn't a season-ending injury. So if somebody dropped him to the waiver wire, you've got some bench room, make that move. Talent is talent. Hamler will get involved. He's really good working out of the slot, too. So in terms of volume, that could be there. Tim Patrick is startable also. I know on Sunday we'll be talking from a DFS perspective about some of these guys, too. But don't forget about Noah Fant, too. He's dealing with some injuries, but if he's healthy, that's another guy that the target share will go up. Teddy Bridgewater looked pretty good in that first game against the Giants. Looked good last year as well, especially in the early going. But overall, Jerry Jeudy's the best talent in that wide receiving core, so it hurts the team. But in terms of the clarity, there's a little bit more now and a little bit more target share to go around because they're talking about 8 to 10 targets a game you could spread around between these guys. And that secondary for Jacksonville is not very good.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, let's close it out because the decisions have to be made usually early in the day, 1 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Eastern on players. The Monday night game, Joe, is Green Bay and Detroit, and the Packers looked worse. Maybe the Falcons, probably the Packers were the worst looking team, I would say, in the NFL last week. Is it just as simple for fantasy players this week to replug in Rodgers and replug in Jones and keep playing Devontae Adams against the Detroit D, or did you see something that leads you to believe that something's getting pulled back on Green Bay this way? I mean, the line tells you no, but look, you see a team in week 1, and it does make you wonder, is something different with them this year? Any belief to that, or just throw last week away?
I think I throw last week away. This is an in-division matchup in Lambeau Field in their home stadium. They're going to have a crowd there for the first time in a long time. I think that's going to have a big factor there. So for whatever reason, there was no juice in that game. Maybe they weren't really game planning correctly, but they overlooked the Saints, and that's a good lesson to learn. And that's happened to the Packers before. A couple years ago, I remember they lost to the Bears in a week 1, and we're all looking at each other. Oh my goodness, what happened? And of course, they righted the ship. So I would look for that once again coming up here. I would absolutely, of course, you're starting Aaron Rodgers. Of course, you're starting Devontae Adams, and I think Robert Tonyan's another guy you can start and feel good. And you're never taking Aaron Jones out. And I imagine they're going to put quite a mud hole in the Detroit Lions on Monday Night Football.
No doubt. Well, Joe, on Sunday morning, will be back with me and Matt Stryker. And also congratulations are in order to Joe because the Los Angeles Rams won and won big, and Joe called it, and he has put his picks on the Rams to bed for 2021. 1-0, no more discussion. It's over. We'll have to find some other streak. That one's done. Joe's on the money with the Rams. Joe, I will see you Sunday. We'll start a new streak. Have yourself a great weekend, okay?
Hopefully it's a better one.
You're already 1-0. I mean, there's nothing to complain about. We'll take a quick time out. We'll be back with Howard Bender as we go through our Super Contest picks next here on Fantasy Sports Today.
SportsGrid.com. Betting insights and entertainment at your fingertips 24/7 as our team covers the most important topics in sports wagering. Real-time odds, predictive betting models, expert picks, and more. Want the edge? Then get on the grid. SportsGrid.com.
Great. Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today as we get ready for week 2 of the NFL season, which means week 2 of the Westgate Super Contest. Howard and I, Howard Bender, we went 3-2 last week, 2-2 going into Monday night, picking up the win with the Las Vegas Raiders. And Howard joins me once again as we take an early look at the lines, which are out for Super Contest week 2. We'll give you some opinions, some leans, and then tonight over on Wager Alarm, live, we make the picks. Howard, it is great to see you once again here on this Friday. How was your week?
My week was just fine, Craig. 3-2 was good. Wanted the 5-0 to get us started, but week 1, there's not a lot of data to play with. There's a lot of question marks around there. And I think that with the exception of the Packers, I think we were in it at the to the very end.
Yeah, and honestly, divisive picks for the 5 picks. The 3 we won, we absolutely were on the right side. The 2 we lost, probably were on the wrong side too. Buffalo did not come through for us, but the Raiders was a really good pick. The Philadelphia Eagles was our pick of the week. That came through as well. Let's see if we could go 4-1 or 5-0 this week. Let's take a look at the lines and see what we're sort of thinking here. And there's been a little adjustment here to some of the lines as well. Speaking of which, the first pick on the board, a little bit different in a couple of the contests. The Saints have now opened up to a little bit more than a 3-point favorite, 3.5 and 4 in some spots. The Saints going to Carolina to take them on. We are both in agreement. I think this is probably one of the picks we're going to use this week. We don't like favorites, but Cleveland is 12.5 against Houston at home. Chicago Bears -2.5 at home against Cincinnati. It is 2. It is also 3 in some spots as well. And then we have Pittsburgh taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. We haven't discussed this one much. Pittsburgh -5.5 there. So, of the 4, Howard, I think we're in agreement. We're in the contest, the super contest. We're probably going to take the Browns. How do you feel about any of these other games?
Well, my instinct, my gut instinct tells me that I want the I want the Bengals in the points and I want the Panthers in the points. But if the line's going the other way here and we're not getting any value on the pick, it kind of makes me a little bit nervous for that one. Again, another favorite, a bigger favorite in the Steelers with a home game against the Raiders. I'm kind of, I'm looking at that one there and I'm thinking, can the Raiders really do it twice in a row? Can they? I don't have as much faith in the Steelers now as, I did in years past with them. So
Sure. Yeah.
I'm probably going to leave that one alone. Out of these 4, the Browns pick is the only one I really, really like. If the Panthers line, if the line itself stays around 3.5, I might be inclined to go with Carolina here and taking the points.
Yeah, I'm seeing some 4 in some spots, but again, these are locked lines for the super contest, but we don't have to make our decision technically until Saturday, but we'll make them live on the air tonight. I'm with you on Pittsburgh Raiders. I mean, I don't know that I really got a clear indication of either team after week 1. I'll leave that alone too. All right, division battles. Let's get to them here. Bills at the Dolphins, and this line 3.5. We're seeing some mostly 3.5 in some spots. We have the Rams, really fishy line here. Rams going to Indianapolis and only 3.5-point favorites. So, my eye is on the dog here. Speaking of which, more dogs, more points. 49ers on the road. They are laying 3.5 at the Eagles, and the Broncos are on the road, and they are laying 6 points at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Boy, four games, 4 road favorites. No chance all 4 of these come in for the favorites. I can tell you that right now. Probably a better chance all 4 dogs end up covering in this.
Probably. I'll tell you what, the dog that I like the most out of this is the Colts. And I'll tell you why. I mean, this is a conversation you and I routinely have when we look at the overreaction. I mean, with everything that we saw with the Rams, how they just absolutely annihilated the Bears. And granted, fine, it's the Bears, but I mean, Stafford was smiling, McVay was smiling, Kupp has a new best friend here, and all of that goes on. And then the Colts got beaten up by the Seahawks. So granted, it's the Seahawks, and we expect them to play a good game, but you would think that with the way the Rams perform, that why isn't this line 4.5, 5?
I agree.
Possibly even 6. When it gets like that to me is Vegas trying to get the public to bet the Rams. Give me the Colts.
Yeah, this is a weird line. You would think that, why aren't the Rams a bigger favorite on the road? I agree with you. Colts actually 4 in some spots too. That's not a surprise. The public will bet the Rams very heavily this week. I think we'll probably be on the other side for sure. Broncos, Jaguars, I don't know. We both know we're taking Denver next week as their first home game. We'll save them for next week. And boy, I like San Francisco and Philadelphia. This is a hard one for me to call, but we're going to have to pick 5 games eventually. One that I do like. Let's get to the next set of games here. We have the division battle between New England and the New York Jets. You've been pretty good on it against the Jets, so I'll get your opinion on that. Jets getting 6 at home. I do like this next one here. The Cardinals and the Vikings. In one of the other contests we're in, I see Minnesota +4. I'm feeling like everyone will take Arizona, but Minnesota is my pick here. Tampa Bay against the Atlanta Falcons, 12.5. And then we have Seattle going against the Tennessee Titans, and Seattle is -5.5 at home. I like to bet the over probably in that last game, but I don't know about the side. How do you feel about these?
I'm kind of leaning towards Tennessee in this one and just taking the points. I do love Seattle's new offense. I think that moving to a West Coast passing scheme is definitely working much better for them. Their defense is terrible, though. And I don't necessarily know if they've got the front 7 to really, put the kibosh on Derrick Henry like we saw this past week. So, I kind of, and I get it, Seattle at home, it's always tough to go up against them.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't say that they're going to lose the game, but I don't necessarily know if they win it by a touchdown. So my lean here is the Titans on this one. I'm not going to touch Jets Patriots. Sometimes they play them close. Sometimes the Patriots blow the Jets out. That's really, what it comes down to. And so, the Mac Jones era, I don't know enough really about what New England's going to do to make that happen. And I think I'm kind of on an opposite side with you here with the Vikings and the Cardinals. I think that, with Chandler Jones there and for now a healthy J.J. Watt, I think that this Arizona defense is a little better than we thought coming into this game. And I mean, really, if you're focusing on stuffing the run, you're stuffing Dalvin Cook, you've got the personnel that can kind of hang with Justin Jefferson, maybe kind of, hang with Adam Thielen too. So I'm a little concerned about this one here. Maybe that extra hook, maybe that's what might be that could help, but that's where I'm at with that game.
And I understand that. I just think that if Arizona doesn't blow out Tennessee last week, I think this line is pick 'em. I don't think the Cardinals are a favorite, but I think this is a little bit of an overreaction. But by the way, I'm with you on Tennessee, so I'm willing to pivot off that and take the Titans plus the points there. I'm always up for a good dog. So plus 5.5, we'll probably use that this week. All right, final 3 games. We got the one later game and then the Sunday night and then the Monday night. The final later game is the Chargers -3 against Dallas. This line has moved with all of the injuries to the Cowboys. You cannot get 3 anymore, or you cannot give 3 anymore with the Chargers. It's up to 3.5 and 4 in some spots. The Chiefs are going to go to Baltimore and take on the Ravens Sunday night. And so 2 night games back to back for the Ravens. They usually win one of those 2. I don't know if they will this time around. They're getting 3.5. And then the Monday night game is Green Bay. It's kind of a dud, laying 11 against Detroit, unless you feel the game will be closer than you expect. I fully expected to come on here today and tonight to take the Cowboys and take those points. I'm starting to get a little bit worried, though, that the injuries are piling on. I'm going to regret not taking the Cowboys, Howard. I'm going to regret it because I know the Chargers are not covering this game. When am I going to learn my lesson? But those are the remaining 3. You like any of these?
Well, you and I play in the Super Contest, and you and I play in the Golden Nugget. If you want to take the Cowboys in 1, I'll let you. I don't buy it, though. I actually like the Chargers, but knowing what the Chargers have done to us in the past, and not just to us, to everybody, right? It's like, home favorite? No, don't take them. Road dog? Yeah, that's probably the time, right? Yeah. So, we'll have to, we'll talk behind the scenes. I like the Ravens with the points here. I don't care if the Chiefs win this one, but I think this is one of those back and forth games that we start seeing where it's like the 1-point game at the end, or the late touchdown gives them a 2-point lead or something to that effect. So I'm on the Ravens there. And yeah, I mean, the Packers to lay the points here against the Lions. I think it's kind of I'm not going to say it's a no-brainer. I just don't have the faith really in the Lions I think that was more an indictment on San Francisco's defense, just taking their foot off the gas, not having Robert Saleh there yelling in the ear of all the players to stop, phoning it in there for that second half. But yeah, I mean, if we're going to take the Browns, I'm not taking 2 heavy favorites this week.
No, it almost never comes through. The 3 heavy favorites are Tampa Bay, Cleveland, and Green Bay. And I don't think that we really have a strong opinion on Tampa Bay, Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta can't be that bad. Bucks probably aren't that good, but who really knows there? Okay, so, some leans. I think that we have Cleveland as a lean. I think we have Tennessee potentially as a lean. Mm-hmm. Indianapolis as another dog. Baltimore, I probably would agree with you there. We'll make our final picks tonight on the Wager Alarm live stream, but I'm feeling good. We got pretty much 3, I think, out of 5. We'll just have to finalize that tonight. Howard, okay, sounds good. I'll see you tonight, and we'll see you next week right here on Sports Grid. So have a great weekend.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Craig. Always a pleasure to get a chance to talk to you here.
All right, Super Contest picks will be up on the Wager Alarm live stream tonight and also on the website. Howard Bender with us here on Fantasy Sports Today. We're going to close out our week in style. We got Fantasy Reality, Sports Grid 60, and a lot more coming up right here on Fantasy Sports Today on Sports Grid. So stay on the grid. We'll be back in just 2 minutes. Don't go away.
SportsGrid.com. Betting insights and entertainment at your fingertips 24/7 as our team covers the most important topics in sports wagering. Real-time odds, predictive betting models, expert picks, and more. Want the edge? Then get on the grid. SportsGrid.com.
Break. If you want the latest on some of our picks, predictions, and even opinions here on Sports Grid, make sure you head on over to Twitter. It's a great place to be. Follow us there at Sports Grid and at Sports Grid TV. Of course, all of our shows are broadcasting virtually 18 hours of the day. You don't have time to watch it all, of course, so just go to Twitter and follow us there. This way you can catch all the things that we're saying, including the morning after, the early line, our show here on Fantasy Sports Today. Scott Farrell and going coast to coast and all the weekend shows here as well. Coming up on a big weekend for football, college and pro football, of course, coming up this weekend. Plenty to get to. But before we do that, let's turn it over to our producer, Brett Levy, because it's time for Fantasy or Reality.
Well, we're starting with a Major League Baseball today. Had to catch myself there. I didn't know where we were in the rundown for some reason. But Salvador Perez has been on fire this year. He tied Johnny Bench for the most home runs in a single season by a catcher. So, Davis, we'll start with you because this is your guy. Salvador Perez is having the greatest hitting season for a catcher ever. Is this fantasy or reality?
So I am thinking, like, obviously in terms of home runs, it's definitely true. And so I was just, kind of trying to think of like the fantasy baseball ramifications. And the only other guy I could think of was I was looking at Joe Mauer's 2009 season, 28 home runs, 4 stolen bases, and a 365 batting average. So what's more valuable in fantasy baseball, the 365 batting average or the 46, 47 home runs? Hopefully 50 would be amazing for Salvador to get to 50. I'm going to say it is because home runs are harder to hit than singles, right? John Jaso could go out there and hit singles and take his walks. But Salvador Perez is a decent enough defensive catcher, depending on who you ask and depending on the day. But getting 50 home runs from a catcher, that's really unbelievable. So I'm going to say reality. Salvador Perez is having the greatest hitting season for a catcher ever.
Okay, well, here's what I would ask you, Davis. In your opinion, because this is the one that would be the debate here. In your opinion, does this beat that season? 40 home runs, 124 runs driven in, 104 runs scored, 362 batting average, and 431 on base. Does that beat Salvador Perez's season? I don't know the answer to that. Do you think it does?
No, I think it's incredibly close. But I think that because the home runs are the most non-replaceable category, right?
Yeah. So that's Mike Piazza in 1997. That's Mike Piazza in 97. He had 40, 124. He batted 362. That's commonly accepted as the best hitting season for a catcher of all time. So I guess Salvador Perez has the best ever. It does appear that way. 50 home runs. I don't know how you can argue against it. Most people are using Johnny Bench. I think that Piazza's season in 97 was better than Johnny Bench's. So I think, Brett, I guess the answer is reality. I can't really argue against it, especially if he ends up with 50. The batting average is going to end up being what, like 60 points higher? So there is some debate there. I think that that's fair, but it's very close, though. Very close here for me. I'll say reality, but very close.
All right. Well, we touched on this next one a little bit earlier, but we're going to ask it again here. And Craig, we'll start with you. Shohei Ohtani not starting in his game on Friday as a pitcher. He will still be batting, though, but without pitching the remaining of the season, we got to ask, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. can steal the MVP away from Shohei Ohtani. Is this a fantasy or reality?
Well, if the odds on FanDuel tell you anything, the answer is fantasy, because you basically have to lay $450 to win back $100 on Shohei Ohtani, and Vlad Jr. on FanDuel is plus 950. That tells you the story. I don't care about anything else. Will the gap be narrowed a little bit if Vlad continues to do what he's doing? Sure. Will Ohtani ever be down to minus 300 or 250? Minus 250? Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's a possibility. But Ohtani is the MVP. Vlad cannot steal it. Look, strange things happen in sports and in life. If Vlad hits a home run every single day the rest of the season, literally, and breaks every record in the record books for that, then yeah, of course. I mean, that could change things. But all things being equal, in a normalized end of the season where Vlad Jr. hits a few more, Toronto even gets in the postseason, and I'll even go as far as to say Vlad Jr. even hits for the Triple Crown. Ohtani is still the MVP of the American League. It stinks to be him having this kind of season up against the greatest single season we've seen maybe since Babe Ruth. So I'm going to say fantasy. He can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I want you to be right. Nothing would make me happier than for this to be an impossibility. But Vlad has gone on the FanDuel Sportsbook from like 20-1 to 15-1, now 9.5-1. They're making Ohtani's corresponding odds a little bit shorter as well. If the Blue Jays make the playoffs, right, whether that is the first wild card, the second wild card, a playoff game, 183rd game or whatever, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. wins the Triple Crown, I do think the baseball writers will give it to him. I don't think they should. I think that it would be a mistake because what Ohtani is doing is unparalleled in the history of baseball. No one has done what he's done in 100 years, right? But the baseball writers, obviously, they care about the playoffs a lot. Like, the playoff stuff is going to matter. Your performance matters more on a team that's winning. And I would assume every Triple Crown winner of all time has won the MVP. But again, every Triple Crown winner of all time has not been up against someone having the season that Ohtani is winning. So the way that the question is phrased is not Vladimir Guerrero Jr. will steal the MVP away. It's phrased as can steal, and I can see it happening. So unfortunately, my answer to this question, and it makes me very sad to say it, but it is a reality.
All right. Well, our last one, we're looking over to USA Basketball. Greg Popovich had a very short stint taking over for Mike Krzyzewski. He did win Olympic gold, but he lost 3 games on his way to get there. So, Davis, we'll start with you. Greg Popovich will be remembered positively as USA Basketball coach. Is this a fantasy or reality?
You know what? I probably think it's I think it's a fantasy. Like, I don't think anyone will have like big happy memories associated with this game because honestly, if you remember, France gave the USA a real game too in that final game. Like, it's not this was not the USA cakewalking to the final and just being the best team in the world, and the offense looks amazing and the defense is swarming. Like, I actually think Greg Popovich, for all the great that he has done for all of his players, all the greatness that he has done, for the Spurs and everything, I actually think we're going to look back and we're going to be like, that was kind of a narrow miss for USA Basketball and things could have been much worse. So I actually think that this is a fantasy and Greg Popovich will not be remembered positively.
I agree. Excuse me. I think it is a fantasy as well. Popovich will go into the Basketball Hall of Fame when it's all said and done for everything that he's done for the game, which will include the Olympics, but no, I mean, there's just no way. I mean, there's been a lot of other success, Chuck Daly and others who have coached the Olympic teams who have done much better. I don't see this being a positive in the end. There's been a lot of struggles with the Olympic team too when they're supposed to dominate. So I'll say fantasy, no doubt. Brett, no questions on Florida, Alabama here for the end, man. Like nothing. Like we're not going there today.
Well, we did that already. We previewed the game Wednesday, I want to say. So I didn't want to repeat ourselves. All right.
We should just keep talking about the Gators all week long. Davis is taking the Gators on the money line. He thinks they're going to win outright. He already said it. I think the same thing. And that, listen, that's a big day for me tomorrow. I mean, tomorrow is such a big day for me in a lot of different ways. It's a huge day if they win, because it puts them in the national championship picture. It's also a huge day if they lose, because it means I don't really have to. I mean, I can watch the games with a lot less pressure the rest of the season if they lose, not when, if they lose. Right, Davis? Like, once your team is out, like if Oklahoma loses, like you root for them, but once they lose, it's like, all right. I'll watch the games, but it may not be appointment viewing.
Yeah, I mean, once Oklahoma loses, lose to Texas, lose to Iowa State, whoever they lose to, once they lose, that's it. The college football season has run its course for me. They lose to K-State last year or the year before? I think the year before. So Oklahoma loses to K-State in 2019. That's it for me. I'm done. I'm out. I don't care. Right? If you're not going to have the Heisman Trophy winner and you're not going to have you're not going to be in the college football playoff as an Oklahoma fan. Now, if I was a fan of the Ragin' Cajuns, or I was a fan of Ball State or something, I guess I would be more. Like, I think if you're a fan of a middling college football team, you're more just programmed to be in there. But you're a fan of the Gators. I'm a fan of the Sooners. Like, it's like we care about national championships and we care about Heisman trophies, and nothing else matters, right? Those are the only two things that matter to me as an Oklahoma Sooners fan.
Yeah, like for Brett, his season, unfortunately last week with Rutgers beating Syracuse, Brett, I'm sorry. I don't know how you're going to recover from that. I know you had high aspirations of them winning 10 games, but that was a tough loss.
We get the Albany Great Danes this weekend, so I think we'll bounce back here, Craig. Big game. Not quite Florida, Alabama, but just one step below, I think.
So, Davis, tomorrow, what's on your menu for tomorrow? Are you going to watch college at all, or what? You got stuff going on?
No, I will definitely watch some of the college football tomorrow. But Craig, we get to this second weekend or this third weekend in September. It's always the same thing every year. The new iPhone comes out. So what do you got to do? I don't know about you, but for me, I always got to get the new iPhone. But what also always happens at this time of the year, I don't think I've ever had an iPhone where I haven't cracked the screen by this point. We get to September and I have the cracked screen on the iPhone. So you go send your phone back in. Well, you can't send your phone back in with the cracked screen. So I bet this specific weekend in September, this third weekend in September, I bet I have taken my iPhone on that Saturday to a phone screen repair place like every year for the last 4 years, because I always want the new iPhone, but I don't want to pay the $400 or whatever they'll charge me if I send it back in with the cracked screen. So early Saturday morning, I will be at iPhone device repair or whatever, and I will be sitting there in the parking lot waiting.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't got a new one in probably 3 years, maybe. I think I don't know. I'm 3 generations ago or something like that. I just really haven't had many issues, but I'm considering it. I'm considering getting the new one. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll transfer all my stuff over, but we'll see. Reminder for the weekend, in addition to all the in-game live program that we have coming up tonight and tomorrow, we have Fantasy Sports Today's Sunday morning edition helping you out in fantasy football. For those of you who have not caught the show, it is Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern with myself and Joe Pisapia and Matt Stryker. We help you in DFS, season-long leagues, start, sit, give you the latest as to what is going on in the NFL leading up to the game. So make sure you catch us then. We'll be right back to wrap it up with the Sports Grid 60 here on Fantasy Sports Today. Great.
SportsGrid.com. Betting insights and entertainment at your fingertips 24/7 as our team covers the most important topics in sports wagering. Real-time odds, predictive betting models, expert picks, and more. Want the edge? Then get on the grid. SportsGrid.com.
Great.
We're just about done with our week of shows here on Fantasy Sports Today as we take you into week 2 of the NFL season. Let's wrap it all up with today's Sports Grid 60.
Well, the victory laps are already starting, right? People who didn't take Will Fuller in their seasonal leagues, right? They're like, see, I knew about Will Fuller. He's always hurt. Don't take him. I knew not to take Antonio Gibson. His price tag got way too rich because he was never going to play on any third downs. I knew not to take Ezekiel Elliott because they weren't going to pass him the ball. Tony Pollard is the better running back. And, I just think everyone would do well to remind themselves of some other wild week ones in history. Remember Malcolm Brown had 2 touchdowns and 27 PPR points in week 1 for the Rams last year. I remember Stephen Hill in his first ever game for the New York Jets had 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Let's maybe settle down with the overreactions here in week 1 because we a lot of games left to be played. A lot of time on the clock left, my friends.
No doubt. Want to give some advice out here, some betting advice as we end the show. Gave this out a couple weeks ago. Want to mention it again because this is probably the last time you're going to have a chance to do it. Matt Corral, the quarterback of the Mississippi Rebels, is 4-1, down to 4-1. He was 8-1 to win the Heisman Trophy. He's got a really good shot to win the Heisman Trophy. Lane Kiffin is all about these optics. He's the head coach there. And if I know anything about Lane coaching here in Florida at FAU, he's going to push Corral to try and win. Now, remember, Alabama's going to play against Mississippi at some point this season. If Mississippi wins the game, Matt Corral is the Heisman Trophy Award winner, and you're getting 4-1 on that bet right now with Matt Corral to win the Heisman. By the way, Bryce Young is 3-1 over on FanDuel. That's my 2 cents as we end the show today. Thanks to everybody watching this week. Thanks, of course, to our friends over at LTN and Danny and Ryan on our graphics, our producer, Brett Levy, and for my co-host, Davis Maddock, I'm Craig Mish. I hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you Sunday morning at 8 a.m. getting you ready for Fantasy Football Week 2. See ya.
Great.